Welcome to Corrections Mama channel. Today is the first story that I'm going to tell you about. I don't really have it documented or anything like that because I wasn't directly involved and it didn't require me to do paperwork. But it did happen on my unit, and it did happen in the early 2000s, earlier in my career in Arizona. This is a crazy story about a librarian, and really the librarians in the prison were really kind of out of sight, out of mind. At the time, we didn't even do really security checks in there. They had a radio, they had a phone. If something went wrong, they would just call on the radio or the phone and let somebody know that they needed help back there. So I don't remember the girl's name, but she was a librarian at the time, and it was in early 2000s. I would say maybe 2003. So the librarian's job in there is to just supervise inmates as they check out books and do stuff in the law library, and I think there was a regular library too, where they can just go in there and read books and stuff. We really, like I said, we really didn't check on these people and do regular security checks. If we needed something, we would pop in. But basically, this officer was pretty much by herself with these inmates and unsupervised. And there were no cameras or anything like that in there either. So this is what happened. It was really weird because, you know, we had passes. There were library passes, there were school passes, and there were passes that were cut into little squares. And if an inmate was leaving, we'd have to ask him, do you have your library pass? Do you have your pass to go to education? Do you have a pass to go to medical? And they had passes also for their jobs and different things like that. They've changed things quite a bit over time, and they don't have those passes anymore. They just have a list that they give us that we would look at and see if they were on the list to leave the building or whatever. This happened at Steiner Unit at Lewis. And all of a sudden, like, everybody wanted a library pass. Everybody was asking for them. They were requesting them. They were looking for them. When we would pass out the passes at night, they wanted to make sure they had their library pass. Where's my library pass? And I thought, wow, this is really weird. Like, why all of a sudden does everybody want a library pass? Why is everybody just flocking to the library? And all of these inmates were going to the library, an unusual amount of inmates wanting to go to the library. And one thing that we look for when we work in corrections is change. Has something gone from barely noticeable to a high demand? Okay, why is that? So the library went to being barely noticeable that inmates were coming and going out of there to all of a sudden everybody was trying to flock into the library. And there was another inmate, I'll just give you his nickname. His nickname was 7-Up. And he was a black inmate, and he was a baller, he was a player. And I don't remember exactly what his charges were, but I'm not really even going to discuss that. You can probably figure it out. So apparently he hooked up with this female and started pimping her out. And she was the officer in the library. Like, she had a badge and a uniform, and her job was to hold down the library. And he was very convincing and very manipulative. And and after this incident, going forward, this inmate had compromised many inmates. I mean, many female staff. So he kind of had like a charismatic type of personality. And personally, I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all. I always got a creepy feeling around him. I just did not like him. And he convinced this female somehow to let her make extra money by allowing inmates to have intercourse with her in the library, at work. Like, what? What? You're having sex at work? And not with staff, which happens, which is gross, but with other inmates? Are you kidding me? This really happened. So the inmates were all trying to go to the library, and they were like pulling a train on this lady. Like, they were lining up and just having their way with her, bending her over the counter and having sex with her, one inmate after another. Like, how sad would you have to be of a person to allow this to happen? And to, I mean, I guess from what I know of, 7-Up gave her a cut, and then he took a cut. Of course, she probably didn't get that much, but he got most of the money. And maybe she was having an affair with her or something. I don't know for sure. But this lady she got caught because an officer happened to just walk in because he needed something or had a question about something or whatever. He just walked in on it, or maybe she didn't. I think what happened, if I remember correctly, she wasn't answering her radio. So we were doing a security check after an ICS or something. She didn't answer her radio, so somebody went in there to check on her. And there were inmates like standing in line, and there was a inmate behind her doing her. Like, ooh, gross. Talk about don't shit where you eat. Gross. It was terrible. It blew my mind. I was just like, really? Oh my gosh, this kind of stuff really happens? Like, in Texas, I never experienced something to that degree of depravity going on between officers and inmates. So it was crazy, and it was disgusting. And eventually they did a report. They took her out of the library. Back then they didn't arrest you or anything. They didn't enforce the law, especially if it's women that were having sex with inmates. Now they enforce that as against the law, and you'll get arrested. But she was subsequently fired, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, can you believe that happened? Like, and I was thinking, well, I guess, I mean, you're by yourself with the inmates all the time, every day, and nobody ever checks on anybody in the library, so kind of weird, But I can't imagine at what place she must have been in spiritually and in a place with herself that she would allow herself to sink that low and to have that kind of horrible behavior. So anyway, I try not to judge these people, but on the other hand, you kind of like, what? You have to, and at some degree, like, you have to be careful who you associate with at work, because there's good officers and there's bad officers. There's compromised officers, and there's officers that come in good and end up compromised later. And I've seen plenty of that. So, and I really had no respect for the officers that were compromised by sex, by drugs, or any other thing. Like, I just really had a disdain for officers that behaved so inappropriately. I don't know. I just could not wrap my head around why people would do stuff like that. And then, like 2 years later, after she was fired, she reapplied and they hired her. We were like, what? She's back? You guys brought that hoe bag back? She was sleeping with, like, the whole yard. I don't understand. How could they miss that? How could they? Oopsie. We accidentally rehired her. They rehired her and she was back, and everybody was like kind of up in arms. Like, no way, you can't do that. Like, now we're going to have to deal with her. Nobody can trust her. Like, this is terrible. And it was terrible. They should have never rehired her. And then they ended up firing her again. And I don't think she ever came back after that. At least, not that I heard of. But yeah, it was horrible. It was ridiculous. It was unbelievable. And it was mind blowing that this could even go on. But prison is run by human beings, people that make mistakes, people that make poor decisions. Some people are broken, just like the inmates. You have inmates that don't bother you and don't give you a hard time and do their time and go. And then you have inmates that, continue to get into trouble and continue to act terribly and do bad things and make bad decisions. I'm not saying that this sort of thing is a regular thing and happens all the time. That's pretty much kind of the only time I know of something to that horrible extent that somebody was actually, being bought and paid for, and the inmates were paying 7-Up, and then he was paying her somehow and getting money on his books through these guys. And I don't know the details of the business end of it and how he paid the lady and how he paid the officer and how he paid the other inmates, paid him. I don't know the details on the money thing and the business end of it, but I do know that she was getting paid and he was getting paid. And he remained on the yard. They didn't even take him off the yard. I don't think they put him on a higher custody yard or whatever, because I remember him being there for a long time. And I really did not like him. And there were many other female officers on the yard over a long period of time that he compromised. But one inmate was saying that, at some point the inmates were trying to compromise me, but they were never able to crack through that shell. They were never able, because I know who I am and I know where my moral compass stands, and I'm very strong-minded about how I feel about that and what I feel about right and wrong. A lot of times it's kind of black and white for me, and I feel very strongly about it, and I'm very grounded. So they weren't able to penetrate my bubble to let my guard down to such a degree that I would lower my standards to be compromised by an inmate, whether it was financially or sexually or in any other way. So anyway, that's the story for today. And just remember that you need to make sure that you know who you are and what you stand for and what you believe in and what your morals are. Where's your moral compass? Are you going to be flexible? Are you going to be easy for somebody to compromise? Or do you stand really strong in what you believe? And I think that that's what kept me over many, many, many years. Kept me strong and allowed me to continue in the career for so many years without having been compromised or anything like that in any way. So anyway, that is a nasty, creepy story that really did happen, and that's the end. Please like and subscribe and leave your comments too.